Okay, so this is yet another EFF-Austin party with the Electronic Frontier Foundation, our progenitor. I won't tell you the whole history, but EFF became the sole and only chapter of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and we've been doing this for over 20 years. And we're doing it hot and heavy today. We are also part of a coalition called the Texas Electronic Privacy Coalition. Woo! And Scott is one of our prime movers there, and he'll be speaking momentarily. Before we get started tonight, I want to thank a few people, as we always do. One is to thank EFF for being EFF. Hey. And my hope is that everybody in this room tonight is supporting the Electronic Frontier Foundation with your donations and also with your responses when they have an action, when they ask you to do something. Electronic Frontier Foundation totally rocks. They're doing some of the best work out there, and actually, a lot of the work they do is unique. Nobody else is doing it. So, thanks, EFF.
Thank you.
And I want to thank our sponsors tonight, CH3 Data, and also Pillsbury, Winthrop, Shaw, Pittman, a local law firm. And I also want to thank did I lose it?
Yep. Also tap it. Sometimes that
You think tap it will just make it come back? What about it? If I got that chicken? So I really want to also thank Dave Damaris. David Damaris, who is one of our two DJs tonight, and Owen McNally, who I would point at. Oh, there he is. Who is the other DJ? They have both been friends of EFF-Austin for a long time, and I can't count the number of these parties that one or the other is DJ. And I should also mention that this party, this South by Southwest party, the EFF and EFF-Austin collaboration, has been ongoing since 2001. The first one of these things was organized by Cory Doctorow and I, when we got just a bunch of cards in hand and walked around the convention center and handed them to people and totally filled the place. Can't do it that way anymore. I wish we could, but we did totally fill this place. So, we are going to have a longer talk by our special guest, Bill Binney, tonight. And we're really glad you're here, Bill. Before he comes up, though, EFF will say its own few words through Nate Cardozo. So, Nate, would you like to come up?
Sure.
I'm John Wojtkowski, and I'm the president of EFF-Austin. I always forget to tell people who the hell I am.
Thanks, John. And thanks, EFF-Austin, for hosting this event. The beer was delicious. Sorry, it's alive.
It's alive. It's alive.
Oh, it's alive. The beer is delicious. Yay! Yay! I'm Nate Cardozo. I'm one of the staff attorneys at the Electronic Frontier Foundation in San Francisco. I'm on the civil liberties team, which means I do privacy and free speech. I don't do the IP stuff. That's my colleagues. And I was asked to just say a few words about what EFF has done in the last year and what we're doing in 2015. So here we go. 2014 was one of the biggest years at EFF. In the wake of the Snowden revelations, we got a lot of excitement, a lot of interest, and a lot of energy as a result of that. So 2014 was big. We launched Surveillance Self-Defense, which is a guide for regular people around the world to figure out how to use end-to-end encrypted products and encryption at rest to keep their data safe. We won net neutrality. Wow! We launched dearfcc.org and channeled more comments to the FCC in favor of net neutrality than anyone other than John Oliver, and we gave him a run for his money. We launched Let's Encrypt. We announced Let's Encrypt, and it launches this year. Let's Encrypt is a new certificate authority which will give free certificates to anyone who's running a website so that they can get SSL running, HTTPS running on their website for free in a way that's trusted in every browser by default. So you're not going to get one of those certificate errors that something like CA Cert gives. We want to start TLS everywhere. This is a tool for systems administrators to encrypt back-end SMTP traffic. And we've already seen something like a 40% increase in regular email being encrypted on the wire. No effort necessary at all on the end user side. One of the cases that I'm most proud of, I sued the government of Ethiopia last year on behalf of a very nice man named Mr. Kadane. He lives in DC. And the government of Ethiopia owned his computer and wiretapped his Skype calls. So we are suing them under the Federal Wiretap Act in district court in DC. No one has ever sued a foreign country for wiretapping in the United States, so we'll see how that works out. Because we think that it should be illegal to spy on someone without a court order. You can see that. We launched the Secure Messaging Scorecard. This is just a checkbox style scorecard that rates encryption or rates communications applications on whether they do the bare minimum to protect your communications. And our case-challenging national security letters finally made it to the Ninth Circuit. And my colleague, our incoming general counsel, Kurt Opsahl, argued in October. And the Ninth Circuit usually takes about 3 to 6 months to issue a ruling. So any day now, we will either get the district court who ruled NSLs unconstitutional, that will either be affirmed, or we'll go up to the Supreme Court. 2015 is going to be big. It's a big year for encryption. The director of the FBI, James Comey, along with the Prime Minister of the UK, have said that they don't want you to be able to use end-to-end encryption. We think that's BS, and we are going to challenge it as hard as we can. If they introduce a key escrow requirement, you can be guaranteed that we'll be fighting that in court. If they introduce CALIA 2 or a data retention mandate, you can be absolutely positive that we'll be filing suit against that. This may well be the year that the Supreme Court finally addresses the third-party doctrine. Do you have an expectation of privacy in your emails stored on third-party servers? Nope. Yes. So we will be telling the Supreme Court that probably this year, if not this year, definitely next. And we have, dozens of other lawsuits, some of the ones that I'm most proud of, that are ongoing right now, and we'll see results this year. We have 3 Freedom of Information Act litigation suits, one looking for information about dirt boxes. Dirt boxes are stingrays on planes. These are flying cell site simulators that are being used in the United States right now without warrants. And so we have a Freedom of Information Act litigation seeking documents about those. We have a California Public Records Act request seeking documents about automatic license plate readers that are being used all around the country, and we're seeking 1 week of data for LA. And finally, a case that I'm very proud of as well, we have a FOIA litigation against the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the NSA, seeking information about the vulnerabilities equities process. This is what we think of as probably a fictional process that the government decides whether to sit on a 0-day and own your computer or disclose it to the company. The White House has said in the vast majority, they disclose to the company, and we think that's bullshit. So we're assuming early information about it. Thanks for your support. And Bill Binney, I guess, or do you, John, do you want to say who Bill is?
I do want to make note of the fact, for those who doubt the power of EFF, I want you to note that when Nate stepped up there, the beer started flowing again. So Bill Binney and I had the great fortune to meet Bill recently at a meeting elsewhere, and we spent a little time together. And Bill is a former intelligence official with the NSA who I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this, called bullshit on some of the stuff that the NSA started doing over the last decade. And I think the word whistleblower has been thrown around, but sometimes I think what we should say is patriot. Somebody who thought that we had an agreement with the citizenry that the NSA did, and that they weren't honoring that agreement. So Bill has really honored us with his presence here tonight. He's going to be speaking tomorrow in Ballroom A. For those of you who are at South by Southwest, at 3:30 p.m. tomorrow, he's going to give a talk. And I should also mention that there is right now in production a film called A Good American by a great director named Fritz Moser, who they'll be releasing that pretty soon. Do you know where they're going to premiere that?
No, I don't. I don't.
Sheffield!
So, but I've seen a cut of the film and it's phenomenal. Yeah, so Bill.
Sheffield?
Sheffield Film Fest.
Sheffield, is that in England? Okay, Sheffield, England. And you know about the U.S. premiere?
Not yet.
Okay, good, cool. So Bill, here's the
But you can watch Citizen 4
scary
right
microphone
now.
that cuts out sometimes.
You can watch Citizen 4 right now.
Huh?
Well, now we get to find out how well NSA is listening. At any rate, I guess I have to talk about going to the dark side, because that's basically what we've done. I mean, Vice President Cheney, when he said we have to go to the dark side, he really meant it, and he really orchestrated it. In fact, in NSA, this was called a Cheney blood oath. You know, Westerners used to cut their hands and it became blood brothers. Well, this was referred to as the Cheney blood oath. That's because he and Addington and you were the ones orchestrating this legally and then directing it personally. So, for my part, when I first saw that coming down in October of 2001, I mean, I realized right away this was a totalitarian process. This is what the KGB and the Ministry of Internal Affairs in the Soviet Union and the Stasi in East Germany, this is what they were doing. Except the Stasi, you know, the Stasi had really great files on most of the population of East Germany. And they were all, it was all handwritten and orchestrated in files and lined up, you know, and everybody was spying on everybody, basically. Now they're doing it electronically. If you do anything electronic, you're scooped up and recorded. In fact, I'll be talking about this tomorrow. There are between 80 and 100 fiber optic taps on the fiber network inside the United States, the 48 states, a little over 48. And a number of them are here in Texas. And those are all marked on a slide called the Fairview program, which came from Edward Snowden. I had assumed there was something like 22 at the major internet sites, but they went after the voice network. That's how Tim Clementi, an FBI special agent, could say on CNN after the Boston bombing that the intelligence community and the FBI had a way of getting back to conversations on phones made earlier in time. That's because the recording, my estimate, was about 80% of the phone calls inside the United States. That's domestic calls, and it's capturing content. Not just, and the other side is the other 23 of those sites, or 22, are for the internet. That means they're capturing the text data that you're passing. And in addition, if you remember the recent revelation of the SIM card theft of $2 billion a year, that's this little gizmo here. What that means with the key is they can now download an implant into your device and control it. So that means they'll give them $2 billion a year possibilities for implants using mobile computers or phones, anything that has a SIM card. So that allows them to control your device, which means they can turn it on when you think it's off, or they can say, send me a location every 5 minutes, so now I can track you. That goes into a program called Charger Map. That program is to map every device on the network every minute of the day throughout the day. The objective is to be able to monitor simultaneously up to 4 billion people and all your movements. Now, if I remember correctly, in 2012 the Supreme Court heard a case, U.S. versus Jones. That had to do with the putting a tracker on the fellow's car. And I think they ruled that it was unconstitutional because they were tracking him, putting a device on his property. Well, this phone is your property too. Putting an implant is just like putting a tracker on your property. What's the difference? We need to fight this. I mean, this is giving a tracking mechanism for everybody in this room and anybody that's anything that's mobile, electronic, phones, computers, anything. So, and this all plays into the other fiber optic taps where they're collecting content. That's telling them who you are, what you're talking about, what you're about to do, and perhaps why you're doing it, and sometimes a wham kind of thing for reporters. And then the treasure map program gives them the when and the where. So that gives them every aspect of your life. What you're thinking, what you're planning, what your problems are, all of that. And that's all being captured and stored. They're not looking at it with people, but it's stored in the event that they want to come after you for some reason. And the idea that you could say that you have nothing to fear is absolutely irrelevant. You mean absolutely nothing to them. But if you're doing something that they don't like, they're coming after you, like they did with Elliot Spitzer because he was going after the bankers for defrauding people in the 2008 fall because they were packaging bad deals and advertising and something else. That's fraud, and he was going after them for that. So they had to get rid of him, and they did that by going in his emails and phone calls and money transactions and seeing what he had. And they found something that was weak, and they used it against him. In the meantime, everybody else lost money, and we all got hurt. And our government's doing that to us. That's the problem. This is why this is an extremely bad path our government has chosen. And Cheney led the way with it. And he had a lot of helpers with the directors of NSA and CIA and also the Department of Justice. I mean, what they're doing is using this data to research for crimes. Then they're passing this out to state and local police to enforce it and go arrest people. Then when it comes time to go into court, they do a parallel construction to find evidence through normal policing techniques, then they substitute that for the NSA data that they used originally to arrest you. And then they claim in court that the data they did through their normal policing techniques was the data they used. That's perjury. So I call that a planned programmed perjury policy run by the Department of Justice of the United States. These are criminal acts. These are criminals we have. We need to fire them, vote them out. I mean, I suggested it several times already on radio and television that we need a new election procedure. We need to randomly pick people from the phone book. We couldn't do any worse than we already had. I mean, you think about it for a minute. You get people who would try to be honest, most of them anyway. That certainly is different. We get people who want to work together to solve problems. That's new. And we get people who want to balance a budget. That's also new. I mean, how could we not do better? Anyway, I thought that was an option because otherwise these people that we've elected are corrupted. I mean, they all should be fired. They're not living up to their oath of office, which is to protect and defend the Constitution. That's their oath. Not to subvert it, which is what we're doing. So my point is that I'm going to be in their face in Washington and anywhere else I can as best I can. So I believe these people are not I mean, in my book, I hate to say this, but in my book, this is treason. Because this is going against the basic foundation of the principles of this country. That's why I'm so upset about this. That's why I'm not going to stop.
Thank you.
I mean, I would have thought that most of those folks who are in Congress, they get down there and they get because of all the money going around. I guess they all get just corrupted. You know, just something that most people aren't well, you know, a few billion here, a few billion there. You know, it's the kind of thing that's talked about. It's all about money, right? The issues really boil down to power, control, and money, and that's what's motivating them. Instead of we, the people, and doing something good for the country. We have lost total perspective on what the Congress is supposed to do. They're not fulfilling the congressional obligation to do checks and balances of anybody. The judiciary is backing out. They're not really up there. They should be in there judging these things and not just bowing down to national secrets as something that they can't even look into. That's crazy. They're supposed to do that. The Constitution mandates that. So, and the same is true with Congress. I mean, they need to stand up, get a backbone. And if these people that we have down there aren't going to do it, you can fire them all and get new ones in. That's why I thought randomly picking from the phone book would be better.
Tell it. How much time do I have left?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. So anyway, I will be talking about that, and also I want to mention that Bluffdale, I guess in the planning, when I look at NSA, people, they plan ahead. Okay, so now they're planning to put a 2.8 million square foot facility on Fort Meade. That's a new storage facility that should handle, it's about 3 times the size of Utah, because their planning is now that Utah will probably be full of data in about 5 years. So they're planning ahead about 5 years to have that facility online. That's probably what it's going to take for them to do it. But we, of course, had a program that we had put together that was a targeted, focused program that would have succeeded and helped them give a rich environment of data for analysts to look at to help stop these kinds of attacks that they haven't been able to stop lately. And that was killed simply because it didn't cost a lot of money. And you wouldn't have to do things like build Bluffdale. I mean, you wouldn't need that big storage facility. You wouldn't have all this development for contractors. And there were so many contractors lobbying against that program downtown in Washington. It wasn't funny because they all wanted to feed on the money. That was the real issue, was money and feeding. So in my book, and I've said this publicly a number of times, they have traded the security of the people of the United States and the free world for money.
The dangerous man who's well informed.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention.
Okay.
I'm happy.
I forgot to mention one thing which I wanted to offer the EFF here. I, as well as Kirk Wiebe and some others, have collected all the evidence of content collection by NSA. That is all the evidence over a period of years since 2002, where they have actually said they're collecting content. In fact, the latest one was Director Clapper, who came on April Fool's Day and said, we are actually looking at content of U.S. citizens. That was published by The Guardian the 1st of April of last year. So it's April Fool's on everybody because we've been duped all along. They've been lying to you. Don't collect content. That's nonsense. That's why they built Bluffdale. That's why they're building this other facility in Fort Meade. They're collecting content. And if you were going after metadata for the world and everybody in every relationship in every domain, you'd only need a space about twice the size of this room. That's it. And you could keep that data there for about 50 to 100 years. So the rest of it, all the other storage facilities, all for content. Anyway, I thought you should know that too.
All right. So, as some of you know, we called for a series of lightning talks tonight. And that means we have a few people who are going to come up and talk for about 5 minutes on various subjects. And they were asked to respond to this prompt. How does your work significantly address the challenges we face preserving civil liberties on the electronic frontier? Not that they had to respond to that prompt, but that was just one idea we threw out. So we're going to start with Scott Henson. Scott is blogger at Grits for Breakfast. I'm sure everybody reads that, the criminal justice blog. No, really.
No, really.
Scott is a former journalist. He's turned into an opposition researcher. Well, he's a current journalist. Yeah, bloggers are journalists. He's a political consultant. He's a public policy researcher. And as I already mentioned, he's a blogger on criminal justice issues in Texas, but they extend beyond Texas too, I'm sure.
All right. First thing first, I have to say, I felt like we were a bit disrespectful and a bit tepid with our appreciation of William Binney, who, quite honestly, I kid you not, folks. This man is one of the greatest American heroes since Audie Murphy, one of the great Texans we've had. And so let's do a little better here, and let's everybody stand up. You bet. Honorary Texan, yes, sir. Nothing I'm going to talk about is important is what you've done, sir, and I thank you for everything you've done. And honestly, I appreciate you, and we're all following in your footsteps on this. And I honestly appreciate and hope you understand how important what you've done is. I know you do. I hope everyone else here does, because truly, we're all following in your footsteps. I don't think other students would be here if you weren't here. So that's a real thing. I'm here on behalf of the Texas Electronic Privacy Coalition, and I wish I could say that we were, trying to stop all the people who were capturing all of your emails or all of your phone calls. But we have much more modest goals than that, because we work in the Texas legislature, and we're here working on state level issues and trying to protect electronic privacy at the state level. And last session, 2 years ago, we succeeded in passing the first in the nation requirement for law enforcement, state and local, to get a warrant to access your stored communications, the stuff in your Google Drive, your Gmail. Under federal law, after 6 months, how many of y'all have a Gmail account, first of all? Raise your hand. How many of y'all have an email in your account that is older than 6 months? And how many of y'all, keep your hands up, please, and how many of y'all live outside of Texas? Those of you who have an email in your account who's more than 6 months. Well, all of you are screwed, because in Texas, we actually passed a law 2 years ago requiring state and local law enforcement, not the feds, but state and local, to have a warrant to access your emails older than 6 months. And one day in the next decade or two, maybe the feds will get around to doing the same thing. But in Texas, we've actually already done that. And this legislative session, we are aiming to take step 2 there and force state and local law enforcement to require to get a warrant to access your cell phone location data. Thank you. Last legislative session, we proposed a similar bill that passed the Texas House 126-4, and then was killed in the Senate by one state senator in deference to the local police unions in his city in Dallas. And happily, that senator was ousted in the Republican primary the following year by a man who ardently supports our bill this session. And we really hope and strongly believe that this bill will pass in the Texas legislature this session, which will make Texas, honestly, among states, probably the cutting-edge state on electronic privacy. I can't think of another state that has both those pieces, both the content and the location data. What's that?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, but more people are going to move to Austin now.
Okay. Well, don't move to Austin. For God's sake, don't move to Austin. Let me just be clear. You're not welcome. You're not welcome. But otherwise. No offense. I'm sure y'all perfectly nice people, but you're not welcome. That's right. Don't go crazy here. Anyway, the Texas Electronic Privacy Coalition is an almost entirely volunteer-based organization. Although I actually lobby on criminal justice topics for other groups on other topics. This is volunteer work for me. My wife and I helped create the organization and roped in EFF, ACLU, some Tea Party organizations here in Texas, and created this bipartisan coalition that, not only just credit myself, there are a lot of folks who've been involved, but we have successfully created a bipartisan coalition that is supportive of electronic privacy, that is able to motivate our state level politicians in a bipartisan fashion. That this is not something that we have a few Democrats pushing. It's not something that a few crazy Republicans are pushing. It's something that we have created a bipartisan coalition to push. And again, the warrants for email content and for cloud content bill last session, or it passed as amendment, went through 126 to 4. That's insane. That out of 150 members in the House of Representatives, that we have an overwhelming bipartisan coalition working on these topics, and it has been impressive how, when you explain these issues on a human level, not on necessarily a tech level, because I promise you our Texas legislators are not the most tech-savvy bunch you would ever meet. But they understand the Fourth Amendment. There are people who, showed up at the Texas Capitol because they cared about the Second Amendment. And we've successfully convinced them, well, maybe you ought to care about the Fourth Amendment too. And that has been a revelation to some of them. But it is real. It's not something that's fake. It's not something that they're doing for political opportunism. It's because they believe in it. And I think that when we pitch these issues in a way that is not partisan, it's not the saying, oh, well, you should back this issue because then you'll vote for my person. Don't care about that. Care about the issue. That's how we've succeeded here, and that's how we've developed a coalition that's been able to sort of break through the gridlock that you see sort of in DC around ECPA or some of these other topics. We haven't had that here because we have pitched these issues in terms that conservatives, liberals, really anyone who values the Constitution, the principles this country is founded on can understand. The same type of principles that Mr. Binney was talking about when he is decrying the ungodly stances of our federal politicians. Well, that's because, in my opinion, they're looking at these things through a partisan lens. They're looking at these things through a political lens. How's this going to affect the next election? And we don't necessarily care about the year. A lot of our Tea Party folks don't care about tomorrow. They think the rapture may happen next week. And so it doesn't really matter to them whether or not, truly, you think I'm kidding. That was a laugh line, but it really isn't. If you actually just care about doing the right thing, these are the right things. Requiring a warrant for self-implication data, requiring a warrant for someone to look at your email, that is the right thing. And I think we need to base our actions on principle and stop worrying about politics, stop worrying about who's going to get elected, stop worrying about who we're going to vote for, and worry about changing these laws. And so I hope everybody who's a Texan here will support our legislation here. I hope if you're from another state, you'll go home and say, hey, if these assholes in Texas can do it, we can sure do it. Come on, they're a bunch of punks. And I also, finally, I hope that y'all, well, honestly, remember to honor Mr. Binney and honor Edward Snowden and honor these folks who are risking their own livelihoods and their own careers in order to bring all this to our attention, because without that, we don't have the opportunity to change these laws. And so I really appreciate you, sir. And once again, just close out instead of applauding for me. Please give me one more round of applause for Mr. Binney here. Come on, don't hold back. All right.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
God, that's it. Yeah.
That's how we do it in Texas. Jimena, are you out there? Yeah, there you are. Jimena Hartzog is an immigrant from Chile. She holds a doctorate in policy studies, and she's the co-founder of Phone to Action, a very cool civic engagement and communications platform based in Washington, D.C. Jimena. And welcome to Austin, by the way. We're trying to advance the slides. Here we go. Cool.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming tonight, and thanks so much, John, and the entire EFF team, not only for the invitation, but also for the tremendous work that you do. Sometimes, you are always probably pushing, and nobody ever nobody always, and not enough people actually helps you enough to push, and sometimes that can be a very difficult job to do. So thank you for the work that you do. I am Chilean by birth, but I moved to the States about 15 years ago. I studied here. I'm one of those immigrants that United States had treated very well, and I'm in love with this country. I wouldn't change it for anything else in the world. And I am one of the co-founders of a civic engagement platform called Phone to Action. We founded Phone to Action at the end of 2012 because we realized, my co-founders and I, that it was absurd that with having the technology that we have today, GPS technology, the access to APIs, and all the information that is in the cloud, that we wouldn't have an easy way for people to connect with their legislators easily on their mobile phones. And so Phone to Action is a platform that allows for people to be engaged in the policy-making process. We start with the principle that civic engagement matters tremendously, that we have to be aware, alert, and engaged. That today, because of the power of mobile technology, we have access to information, and that information that in the past could have been just accessible to some privileged communities, today is accessible to rural communities, low-income groups and minorities. In fact, today, the fastest adopters of mobile technology, smartphones, are rural communities, low-income groups, and minorities. We see, for example, that last year the projection for smartphone ownership was supposed to be 58% this year, and we're already past that to 73%. And so we know that in the States and in the world, we have more mobile devices than people. And so what we do with that technology is what matters in regards to how we allow when the policy making is happening so detached from what we do. So we believe that not only we have, all of us have to be good recipients of information, we also have to be seekers of information, so we need to be alert. Not only just get what we receive, and the most important part, we need to be engaged. And so the tools that we created are tools that are designed for engagement. So for example, here you have a campaign that allows, with just a couple of pieces of information, to email legislators, tweet at them, or put a Facebook posting on their pages. This campaign here is a campaign to fight patent trolls. I know that many of you may know what the patent trolls do. And so just with one click, you can email, and anyone anywhere in the States can email their own legislators at every level of decision making. We are able, because of the technology that we have, we're able to match anyone in the States with any decision maker at any level, from the White House all the way down to small commissions, and going through US Congress, as well as local Senate, and House Representatives, City Councils, everything. And so when you're trying to send a message nationwide, and you may not, people may not know who their elected officials are, through a click they're able to connect with them. I think it's my accent. The tools are available, on desktop and mobile. They're used. This is one of our favorite campaigns, which is to fight patent trolls. But I want to tell you a couple of ideas about how this engagement can happen that is effective. And we know that lobbying, exists. It's fine. We need people to go in and talk to representatives representing others. But the organic, one-to-one person to the representative, to the member of Congress, or whoever the policymaker is critical, because when they hear from you, when they see your address, you're a voter, and they want to get reelected, so they want to hear directly from people. Emailing Congress, calling, tweeting, Facebooking, in-person email, mail, all of those ways work. But what we have seen lately tremendously is the impact of social media. And we have, been following the Congress Foundation research as well as our own research, and we see that because of the email volume that Congress and state lawmakers are getting, they're getting emails that really not having the effect, the impact that they could have. But we see that social media has tremendous potential. If you think about it, the entire Senate is on Twitter, and most government offices, and as well as local governments. So the impact of social media is tremendous. We believe that civic engagement does not end on election day. And if you want to try later on a campaign here, text 12252886 is one of those. But just to end, I know that we need to move on. One of the reasons why, sometimes we don't seek, we don't do enough engagement is because it's not a culture in the U.S. To actually go out there and fight for the rights that we have. I think that that's a part that we could learn a little bit from some of the other countries where they're actually really fighting for the rights. And when you tell people, tweet at your legislator, they say, oh, no, that's for somebody else to do, I'm not gonna do that. But if you look at it, the legislators are actually using social media to connect with people for their own benefits. So you see Cory Booker here replying to someone that is asking him, are you coming to help with the snow? And he said, no, I'm in DC, I'm stuck here, I can go. And you have Ron Wyden also telling the FCC how he feels about a rule. And so I think this, research and all of these fundings and all of the things that we know about social media today, they are giving us a very good data point that we have to think about the use of social media for advocacy in ways that we haven't thought about before. Because while you may need 2,000 letters, and when you may need 30 visits, and when you may need 1,000 emails, one tweet can make a difference in a campaign. Thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah, it's kind of easier to reach those guys with social media than email these days.
It didn't break down again.
Okay, note to the next speakers. Hold the microphone still. Apparently, moving it around doesn't okay. There we go. Is Christian Dawson here?
I am indeed.
Come on.
Would it be okay to just project? Is it okay to not use the microphone?
Yeah, let me go ahead and introduce you, and then you can project.
Okay.
Christian's the founder and chairman of the Internet Infrastructure Coalition, and he's the president of the web hosting company Servant. And now you're introduced.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, Christian.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And speaking of the mic.
What's that? And
Speaking of the mic.
I don't need to speak into the mic. I think everybody can hear me in this room. Is that correct? Yeah. Fantastic. I appreciate it. And I have some slides I'm hoping I can share with you guys. Let's see if we can get them up real quick. Awesome. No problem. Yeah.
Yeah, click through it.
Okay.
Yep, and then.
Oh, that's me?
Yep, that's.
Okay, fantastic.
Bam!
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, what I basically want to do today, guys, is talk to you real about what it's going to take to get surveillance reform done. We all want the surveillance state to change from the status quo that we've got right now. And there's no silver bullet that's going to get it done. It's going to be a long fight over a number of years. But it's very important that we do something about Section 215 of the USA Patriot Act, which is up for renewal or sunset on June 1st of this year.
So how many days? How many days?
How many days? I don't have the extra.
About 80 days.
About 80 days. We've got about 80 days to make enough hay, to make people care enough, to do something about Section 215 of the USA Patriot Act, get it reformed or get it sunsetted so we can move on to the next thing on our agenda and figure out how we can make surveillance reform happen over a number of years. USA Patriot Act is extremely important. But I basically want to talk to you guys today about what it's going to take to make that happen from my perspective. So yes, I don't need to tell you guys what we've learned over the years. Basically, we know that government surveillance encompasses metadata, email, phone calls, and all digital correspondence. The message on online trust is evaporated. I work for a web hosting company, and I see this firsthand. It's been horrible for my business, and it's been horrible for the businesses throughout the cloud. If we focus our attention on the Edward Snowden story, and we make that the message to the world, we're actually doing ourselves a disservice, because if we only focus on the constitutionality, if we only focus on what should or shouldn't be done, we're not getting all the people we need to get who are going to make the votes necessary to change the laws. We need to start having conversations about whether tapping Angela Merkel's phone is making us safer. Whether spying on our allies is making us safer. We need to be having conversations about whether opening up backdoors in encryption is making us safer. We need to be having conversations about whether undermining our Constitution in the eyes of the world is making us safer. But mostly, we need to be making economic arguments. We've been doing studies. We've been finding the business that's been lost, the jobs that have been lost because of the NSA revelations, because it has been determined that the US doesn't care about privacy, and so people can take their businesses and move them overseas with 2 clicks of the mouse. And we've seen huge numbers of businesses and of job opportunities leaving the country. The fallout from Snowden's leaks will have multi-billion euro consequences for U.S. businesses. U.S. businesses are losing contracts, and some of this stuff is in the news. Boeing losing big contracts, Verizon losing big contracts, but most of it isn't that. Most of it really is these small businesses that are losing it in these ways of just like people deciding that they're going to move their business with 2 clicks of a mouse. And you never even hear about it. They're not big contracts, they're small contracts, but it happens again and again and again. And it's like a giant sucking sound of servers leaving the United States and business leaving the United States. And so my company is a company called Servant. I'm a web hosting company, and I have business in 110 different states. Traditionally, 60% of our signups for new businesses come from international sources. Since the NSA leaks, I have seen half the number of leads that I used to see from international sources, which means that I can demonstrate that people from outside the USA, at least half fewer, actually want to continue to do business in the United States. I can see it in my own business. And our stories are not unique. And so the case that we need to make is that a bad economy doesn't make us safer. Fewer jobs doesn't make us safer. And a loss of economic opportunity doesn't make us safer. And the era of just trust us is long over. So, the surveillance state is demonstrably weakening encryption standards and empowering hackers, losing the faith of cloud adopters, curbing the growth of the cloud, undermining the rule of law worldwide, suppressing and shaming innovation, harming global economic interests in its most successful economic sector, and starting the US and other governments on a path of escalated costs and spiraling taxpayer burden. Let me say that again. Spiraling costs and escalated taxpayer burden. That's because these companies like mine, we need to do something to satisfy our users. And so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on encryption. We're going to focus on whatever we can to try and restore the faith of our clients that we can give them the privacy that they want. And so, as we throw more encryption at these situations, governments continue on a spy. It's going to be more and more difficult for them to do it. It's going to get more and more expensive. And it's just this thing that's going to, over time, cost more and more and more as we up the ante and they up the ante and we up the ante and they up the ante. And they can't justify the cost over time. Real surveillance reform is good for the economy. It's good for the rule of law and the safety of those who live under the law. And it's good for the tech industry. And so really what we need to do is we need to figure out how we can reform Section 215 of the USA Patriot Act. It sunsets if not renewed on June 1st. And the way that we've got to do that, guys, we need help preparing economic arguments economic arguments for surveillance reform. We need to show the business costs of surveillance, the real harm. If we can show that this is a jobs and the economy issue, we're going to win. And so that's what we're here to do today. Thank you. Reach out to us.
We need to have an encryption day. Don't you think? Where's Ryan? Is Ryan out there? There he comes. So Ryan Lacking's going to talk next. Ryan Lacking started an offshore data haven, built communications networks in war zones, developed electronic cash protocols on a Caribbean island, and works on security products at Cloudflare. Now that's a resume. Ryan, go over it, man.
Thanks very much for being here today. Really quick, I just want to bring up an issue that I see more and more, the challenge of maximizing user security for end users as well as protecting their privacy. You'd think these things are, you do them in the same way, that they cooperate with each other, but in a lot of ways they are actually in conflict. One of the ways to do security is to keep a lot of logs and to look and be able to do forensics when somebody attacks your system. And unfortunately, if you maintain logs for that purpose, that means you have the logs and the government can compel you to turn those logs over for whatever purpose they wish, which isn't necessarily in your best interest or in the best interest of your users. So it's really important that people, when they build systems, decide what logs they need to retain, what information they need to retain, and ideally minimize the information they're gathering in the first place. A lot of the times we see people attacking systems, not so much to attack the system itself, but to gather the personally identifying information and user accounts of the users on that system to then pivot against other systems. So it's definitely a strategy that if you don't need this data for your own purposes, you shouldn't retain it. There's no reason why you need to have somebody's social security number, address, phone number, everything else, just to open a social media account on the internet. So minimize the amount of data you collect in the first place, and then if you're retaining logs for security purposes, the most dangerous thing about logs is you have them for a very long period of time. So minimize what you collect at point of collection, but also minimize those logs over time. Minimize the duration of them, and minimize how detailed and how granular they are about individual users for the long term. If you need something, you need to be able to do in-depth forensic analysis of an attack, keep those logs for a couple of days. But then keep after a few days, you probably will have known about some of the data. You can then anonymize that data, and then you can move from there on to more aggregated data for longer term retention to determine baselines of your services. And I think it's important that both as developers in this room and as end users of services, we demand that any sort of services we use follow this kind of policy, data minimization policy, as well as other forms of security. So thank you very much. And
all right. So we got one more talk and then a song. So the next talk, yes sir. The next talk is going to be by, he's an author, a journalist. He teaches design. I mean, he's done all these things, but he's really just sort of like an amazing intellect and a very lucid and insightful thinker. And we're privileged to have him here tonight to give one of these 5-minute lightning talks. The explosive and wonderful Bruce Sterling.
I think I'll manage without the microphone. So it's been a long time since I talked to Austin EFF. I wrote a book called Hacker Crackdown in the early 1990s about the founding of Electronic Frontier Foundation and Steve Jackson Games case, Operation Sun Devil, many archaeological topics. I don't live in Austin. I'm here, many times a year, but I spend a lot of time in Europe lately. So I thought for my lightning talk, I would talk about what's going on in Berlin, because I actually hang out in Berlin rather a lot. So recently I was at 2 events in Berlin. One was called As Darkness Falls, and it was this, kind of a political event with a lot of Green Party people and literary people and kind of cultural guys and a few electronica people. And it was about surveillance and the Snowden scandals and so forth. And then another was Transmediala, which is one of the biggest electronic art events in Europe, which is held every year in Berlin. And this year its theme was Capture All, which means all about building big databases and kind of, surveillance marketing and, attempts by companies and governments to build sort of gigantic Moloch-sized privacy invasion, whatever. So, the Germans are not ferociously indignant about what happened over Snowden or the rest of it, but they grant the guy absolute credibility. They just believe everything he says. And, and which I think is a strange kind of victory because, the United States government can kind of tell the German government anything. And their credibility compared to Snowden's is just below zero. I mean, they just know that it's real politic blather and that doesn't represent the actual facts on the ground. People in Berlin, they know about Flame, they know about Stuxnet, they know about the Equation Group. This very week, Snowden was doing one of his, South by Southwest style video appearances at CeBIT, which is the biggest robot mechanic show in Germany. So it's robots and Snowden. So all these robotics geeks are in there and they're just hanging out, listening to Snowden carry on. There were attempts to grant him asylum in Germany. The Germans would sort of like to have Snowden around. They kind of consider him cuddly and everything. They don't really want to upset their relationship with, NATO and the rest of it. But they've kind of gone for his line, hook, line, and sinker. I mean, they believe him in the way that they used to believe Alexander Solzhenitsyn. When Solzhenitsyn was writing about the Gulag Archipelago, and the Russians were sort of saying, prison camps? Why, we have no such thing. So that's kind of the situation over there, and it kind of goes through every level of society. I mean, there isn't anybody in German society who disbelieves Snowden. I mean, from the far right to the far left, they all think he's telling the truth. And I think the same is pretty much true in the US. I mean, there are people who are sort of complaining that he's unpatriotic and shouldn't have revealed these terrible secrets and so forth. But it's a big difference from the early days of the Snowden revelations when everybody said, he's insane, he's paranoid, he's an extremist, he's made it all up, it's all rubbish, where's your evidence? You've made it all, it's all hokum. Okay, the guy's credibility is kind of very solid and stainless. So, that's of great interest. So, what's going to happen? Well, the NSA is not going to disappear. Nobody's been fired. They're getting more money than they ever did. The Germans are not going to demolish their own intelligence services. On the contrary, they're pouring money into them. I mean, they're a little more upset about being surveilled upon, but everybody's gearing up for cyber war. The internet balkanization is at hand. The era where there was some kind of, cyberspace noosphere of John Perry Barlow, where the world was flat and we were all sort of enjoying trading our email. It was always a phantom. The NSA was always there. The NSA is much older than the internet. And espionage is the second oldest profession. We might be able to defund some of it somewhere, but the idea that we can kind of scrub it and get it away, on the contrary, I think we're looking at a new era of nationalist and ethnic flame war internet, really internet polarization. In the US, in Russia, in Ukraine, in China, the firewalls are going up wherever people can put them. People are gathering algorithmically. We've got interminable wars even between gamers and feminists. They're at each other's throats. This is the nature of the actual situation that we have. And the Internet of Things is coming. We're actually going to start exporting these digital media interfaces onto real objects, real services, coal mines, plants, boats, ships, the International Space Station. Anything we can digitize, we're going to digitize. And things are local things, okay? It's like smart cities or cities. The Internet of Things appeals to regional patriotism. If you've got Google doing your search engines in Barcelona, it's okay. If Uber is running all the taxis in Barcelona, you're going to get blowback. They really don't want to give all the taxis to a Silicon Valley company. They're real taxis, real objects with Spaniards inside. It's much more politically problematic to do this kind of wireless, automated, broadband, new world, which is all over South by now. Full of little hardware startups. It's all about gear and so forth. So, the days that I was describing, in the 1990s, are not going to return. Even though I'm becoming an old person, I'm not at all sentimental about them. Cynicism is obedience, epic struggle is coming. Epic struggle. And not just domestically in the USA, in cities, in states, in towns, in neighborhoods, with objects, with handheld devices, with wearables, with screens, with smart cities. A new world is at hand. So, what's the good news here? Well, when you call yourself a frontier organization, it usually means you've got a very short shelf life. What do you do at a frontier? You build cities, don't you? You put up the barbed wire, you elect guys, whatever, you make a lot of money, everybody gets very civilized. Okay, people in the electronic life now in South by Southwest, they're dressed like the ruling class. They're not the neckbeard geeks of 1982. These are guys wearing freaking Apple Gold watches that cost 13 grand. They're all driving Priuses and Tesla Volt cars. But nevertheless, a real frontier is at hand. Things are going to get radically disrupted. And it's not the kind of endless, blithering, cyberspace psychedelic frontier. On the contrary, it's like when you break up things into little pieces, you multiply frontiers. There's going to be a frontier in your toaster. There's a frontier in your shoes. There's a frontier between, the fridge and the car. There's a frontier in small objects, big objects. Smart dust is coming. So, that means your relevance is here. And it's no accident that 2014 was one of the organization's biggest years. There's going to be a lot of trouble. Enough to, multiply everywhere. You've really got a lot to do. And your relevance is very great and growing. And you have friends you don't know. So good luck with that.
Is our media ready to go?
I think it is.
All right. Okay.
Everybody pray to whatever God you're able to.
The mic works.
My cast to work. Okay. So our next and final lightning talk is actually not going to be a talk, but a song. Yasmina Chisanovic, who is a very amazing and prolific Serbian journalist, has joined us tonight because she is not just a journalist, but she's a punk rock star. And Yasmina has been writing reboots of war songs as feminist peace songs. And tonight she's going to do one of those for us. Technology ready? All right, Yasmina.
Hi, hopefully this works, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so last year I sang a song which was called Hacker's Hymn. Maybe some of you were here. It was dedicated to Adam Schwartz and Snowden. This year, this is exactly now the anniversary of abduction of Crimea by Putin. And since Putin is back to life, many suppose he was abducted himself, but no, he's back. I will sing this other song from my album, and it's dedicated to Anna Politkovskaya. You remember her? She's a murdered journalist from Russia. She was an anti-Putin journalist. As many other journalists have been murdered on a daily basis in that part of the world. So, I'm Serbian. We have those problems too. I'm not Russian, but that's about that. Everywhere in the world we have the same problems. And actually my album is going to be treating this kind of issues. So, hopefully it works. Oh, these black dark eyes, big brothers of Russian eyes, burn with good eyes, how they hypnotize, how I need you so, how I fear you though, since I saw you glow, now my spirit's low, your darkness heals, a fire real, my faith now I feel, my soul burnt with zeal, mother's Russian love, smooth as every soul, everyone becomes both her fool and tool. Очень czarная, очень страстная, очень жгучая и прекрасная, как люблю я вас, как боюсь я вас, знак увиделась, я в недобрый час. No, no, Salon, yes, madam. All my confidence lie in my destiny, just to realize my life's greatest prize. I'll not sacrifice for those Russian eyes. I'm Ukrainian, I'm Serbian, I'm Muscovite, Politkovskaya, Putin's dark black lies, big brother's Russian styles, make us all his tools, with the fools he rules. Очень czarная, очень вторная, очень ясная и прекрасная, як люблю я вас, я боюсь я вас, знать и глядела, умный добрый час. We were in Ukraine less than a year ago, meaning exactly after Yanukovych fell, and it was shot on the Maidan Square, as you see. And the band I perform with is actually an Italian band, so nobody's perfect.
Thank you. All right. So, thanks to everybody who spoke tonight. And to Bill Binney especially. Thank you, Bill. Scott, Kiana, Christian, Ryan, and Yasmina. Woo! We got the room till 9:30, so we have some time so everybody just mingle, hang out, and jam. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Yes.
Thank you.